Hi guys, welcome back to my little corner on BookTube. So today we're gonna be talking about the love language book. Literally the love language book. The 5 love languages. How to express heartfelt commitment to your mate, spouse. Well, this book was intended to be used primarily for married people because I read the book in like 2 days, and it seems like it was published in 1992, and it's from the way that this guy talks. He's always talking about the spouse, the spouse, the spouse. So I'm like, okay, so this book was intended for married people, but obviously non-married people use the book. Everybody, not people who are not even in a relationship, also use the book because it's important to know your love language, not just for your spouse or your romantic partner, but also for your friends and your family, so that they know how to best love you. So for anyone who doesn't know what the 5 love languages are, let me read them out for you. So the 5 love languages are words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch, right? And the Gary Chapman in this book, he argues and uses the analogy of like how we as human beings, we have a primary language that we speak, right? And that primary language is your primary like love language basically. So out of the 5 that I listed, one of these is your primary language, aka your primary love language, meaning this is the primary way that you want to receive love. I have a bit of a different interpretation where I'm like, I agree that the 5 love languages are important. However, I don't believe that only one love language is like essential for people. I do think obviously people are not a monolith. So some people, the one love language is like the most important thing, and all other forms of love, they're fine, but they're not the primary love language. For me, I think all 5 languages are important. I just think it depends on the degree, because obviously, so I'll use myself as an example. My two utmost love languages, quality time and physical touch. It was quality time and acts of service. Acts of service has gone down a little bit, but you might find once I have a child, when I get married, that acts of service might rise up. So the way that he presents it is it's as if once you find out what's your love language, that love language remains the same throughout your whole life. I personally don't agree with that, because I think in life, what the way that you want to receive love, it alters and it changes. We as human beings, we're not stagnant. We are constantly growing, constantly constantly evolving, constantly growing. So for that mere fact, I don't believe that your love language stays the same throughout your whole life. And he argues that. I would disagree with that. I don't believe that to be true, because I've seen it in my own life. Like physical touch used to be at the top. Like people who knew me before 2020, you can ask them. Physical touch was like there, number one. But then as time went by, sorry, I'm like seeing someone walking and I'm like, what is going on? As time went by, physical touch, because of 2020 and because I'm an ambivert, physical touch kind of like after 2020 started going down on the ranks, and other forms of love took priority. That's where quality time came into place, and really like took over. And then acts of service also took over as well. So physical touch became number 3 for me. And now physical touch is back to number 2. Well, physical touch is in pair with quality time, in my opinion, right? So in this book, he runs through different scenarios basically, and different relationships of like how their marriage, because this book primarily was written for marriage people, how different people's marriages were at the brink of death, basically. Like their marriages were dead, there was no love, and these people did not understand one another. But the moment that they found out what each other's love languages are, that's when they started to actually realize, oh, okay, so the reason why he keeps saying he doesn't feel loved by me and that I don't love him is because I don't do acts of service for him. Or the reason why she thinks that I don't love her is because we don't spend quality time together. And in my mind, I'm like, but we do spend time together. What are you talking about? But the time that you spend together is not sit down face to face, just the two of you, undivided attention type of time. It's time in other ways, you know. So it just went through so many different like relationships and relationship dynamics, and how the concept of the love languages really revolutionized these people's marriages and revived their marriages. And it's really beautiful. It's an addictive formula that he did. Like, it was like, it's on the brink of, like, it starts off horrible, like as in people's marriages are in shambles, like people are about to get divorces, some people even stepped outside of their marriage already. Like, I was mad at that one guy who really was like cheating on his wife, but anyways, because I do not condone adultery, I don't condone cheating, I absolutely hate that. But anyways, that's sidetrack. So these people's marriages are always on the brink of destruction. Most of their marriages are on the brink of destruction, because there's only one couple where that is not the case, but all the other couples, like, the marriages are not doing well. And then he starts trying to understand, okay, why does person A not feel loved by person B? Why does the wife not feel loved by her husband, and why doesn't the husband feel loved by his wife? And then they unpack it, and then you start figuring out what people's like love languages are based on that. And then they actually implement it. One thing I love is he always recommends that they write a list of some of the ways that they believe if someone did these things for them or said these things to them, they would feel loved by their partner, and that their love tank would be full. So that's also another takeaway, the concept of him instructing them to write a list of the few things that if their partner did this for them on a regular basis, they would feel loved by their partner and seen by their partner. And it was so beautiful to see how, like, what the husband would say for the wife and the wife would say for the husband based on their love language. And obviously at the time they wouldn't have known their love language, but Mr. Chapman, you know, he expounds upon this concept of the love languages and a love tank and all those things, because they didn't know about these things. This is like in the 90s, right? Obviously we know about these things now, but back then they didn't know about these things. And he expounds upon the ideas and the concepts, and it alters people's marriages for the good. And I think the same can go for relationships that we have in our lives, whether they be friendships, whether they be romantic relationships, whether they be even, you know, like formal work relationships. I think there's many ways that we can love people through our actions and also through the things that we say. Because if I look at the list, right, give me a second. If I look at the list, words of affirmation has to do with the things that you say. Quality time has to do with undivided attention, which also has to do with what you do and what you say. Receiving gifts has to do with what you do. Acts of service has to do with what you do, and physical touch also has to do with what you do, like what you actually do with your body towards the other person, the physical touch one. So all of these things, I think it's just such a cool concept, and I love how we have all just taken it and interpreted it in our different ways, that we don't have to stick to the exact way that Mr. Chapman unpacked it, but that we can take what we deem to be valuable and then just spit out the things that we don't really agree with or don't deem to be as valuable, and actually use it to implement in our lives and to revolutionize our lives. Because there's other books that I want to read also in relation to love and just boundaries and all that, like the Boundaries book by I don't know who, and then also what's the other one, the attachment theory situation. I don't know if that's also in the Boundaries book. I don't remember. I don't know, because I have never read the Boundaries book before. But yeah, there's a book I'm specifically thinking about. I'm sure I'll pop it up on the screen, that I'm thinking about in relation to the boundaries situation. And then there's also, I think there is a book about attachment theories and attachment styles and stuff. If there isn't, that would be sad. That would be very sad. I hope there is one though. I really hope so. But that was my takeaway from this book. Like, my takeaway from this book is just like re-solidifying things that I've already known, but also like literally me sharing this with people, being like, yeah, exactly. That's exactly why I keep saying we don't talk. That's exactly why I'm like, I want us to have more quality conversations, because quality time. Because quality time. So I'm literally just like, this makes so much sense. I love how he unpacked it, and I also love how he spoke about how two people can have the same love language. So let's say both of us are acts of service. Just an example, you and I across the screen. Let's say both of us are acts of service, right? But we have a different dialect or in acts of service. So we both have the same love language, but how I want my acts of service to be expressed in order for me to feel loved versus the way you want it to be expressed in order for you to feel loved might not be the same. I might want specific acts of service, and you might want completely different acts of service in order for both of us to feel loved. And yeah, it can be beautiful, or it can be detrimental, because someone could also use this information to actually do the worst things to you. Like if someone knows that you are a physical touch person and that you feel filled by different forms of touches, whether it's a touch on the leg or a touch on the shoulder or a kiss on the cheek or whatever it may be, someone could also use that information in the opposite way, where they could actually be like, you know what, I want to spite you, and I know that you love it when I rub your back, so I'm not going to rub your back actually, and I'm going to stay away from you. I'm not even going to touch you because I'm mad at you. So they could use your very love language against you. So it's like a double-edged sword. Like, it's a beautiful tool, and I think it's an important tool that everyone should have, but we should also make sure that we don't end up using it in the opposite way, where it actually ends up hurting the people that we love, whether we're doing it intentionally or unintentionally. If it's unintentional, check yourself. If it's intentional, person, ma'am, sir, don't do that. Don't do that. That's not nice, because you wouldn't like it if it was done to you. But we're human beings, so sometimes we can be spiteful. So yeah, so that was my takeaways from the Love Languages book. It was such an addictive read, I'm not gonna lie. Like, it was written in such a fast-paced, like super cool way, where it was like we're in shambles, and then we end on a high, and then back to shambles, and then we end on a high, and then back to shambles, and then we end on a high. So like, that was like the arc situation. It was just up, down, up, down, up, down. And obviously the downs are all the different relationships, and then the ups are like when these relationships get restored. But it was so beautiful, and I loved it so much. But I love the concept of love languages, and I definitely think that it shouldn't only be utilized in relation to romantic partners, but it should also be utilized in friendships and in family as well, so that you know how to love the friends in your lives and the family in your life best. Because if you're someone whose love language is receiving gifts, then like quality time and all these other forms of things might be nice, but they're not really hitting that love tank there. They're not really like filling you up the way you ought to be filled. So yeah, so I think it's really important that we are able to love the people in our lives the way that they receive love, and that they want to receive love. So yeah, so I really enjoyed this book. It was so good. I give it 5 stars because I loved it so much. Yeah, I loved it so much. It was so good. And I hope that, you know, if you haven't read it yet, give it a read, because it's really good. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and do all the YouTube things, and I'll see you in another one. Bye guys.